Okay, guys, I'm not in class today because I'm busy jamming on my ukulele, but because I am ever so kind, I've got a wonderful PowerPoint to help you go through today so you can learn a lot of the vocabulary that we'll be using as we go through our debate unit. Now, I have printed off a guide for you to follow along with. If at any point I'm going too quickly, please just ask to stop the video so you can get the notes that you need. Okay? To start off, we've got our learning targets, so I can define and apply debate vocabulary. I can define speaker roles and responsibilities, and I can analyze debate structures and formats. I can also generate topics for my debate, which we'll probably be getting to next week. Oops, okay. Okay, so why do I need to learn debate? Well, you want to persuade others to get what you want. So a lot of your parents, when I told them that we were starting a debate unit at conferences, they'd be like, oh, well, they know how to debate for sure. That's great. You've been debating your parents. We're just going to add some structure to it. Other times you might need to persuade others is college admission essays. Maybe it's to convince your friends to go to a movie that you like, or to argue for something in your job. The second is to help settle other arguments. So maybe an argument that you're not a part of, but you can negotiate a peaceful solution. You can mediate between family and friends. You can be that calm presence that can understand both sides of the argument. You can also defend yourself. You can prove you're innocent in the court of law, which I know none of you will ever have to do. You can prove why something was unintentional, or to argue why something shouldn't have happened. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is the difference between an argument, a debate, and a fight. So they're all types of persuasion. We are looking at debate, which is two people equally trying to prove which side is right using a formal structure. A fight, on the other hand, is a confrontation in which people kind of cross the lines to prove to each other who or what is right. Debate is more, again, structured, and you aren't necessarily fighting for the side you actually believe in. Okay, an argument then is just presenting a persuasive opinion. So within a debate you might have arguments. Within a fight you might have an argument. It's kind of like a claim that you have. Okay, the bottom line, fighting is personally attacking someone in order to win, and a debate is using a logical and neutral or not biased discussion to determine what is right. Okay, debate itself. It is formal or informal. It can be without or with an audience, and we're actually going to have an audience. Your parents are going to be invited, other classes might come in, so you need to be prepared for that. They could be with or without a judge. In ours, I'm obviously going to be assessing you. You're going to be assessing yourselves, and we will have a winner. That is going to be a competitive debate, but some are non-competitive as well. They can be written or spoken. Ours is going to be both. So you're going to be writing your arguments and you'll be presenting them. They could be political, legal, or everyday. Political, you could have in a presidential election. Legal could be a court case, or just everyday debates. They could have consequences for whoever loses. We're not going to have any for ours. It is more than just bickering, so when you're debating your parents, you might think, I'm doing really well. But you might just be bickering. When you're debating, you're using elaborate types of logic that can be used to make things complicated. There's all kinds of different examples that we'll get into as we continue through the debate unit. There are many types of formal debate. Each has its own set of rules and structures for what is said and when. The example that we're going to look at next is the Lincoln-Douglas debates. For this unit, though, we're using a very simplified version of this. So the Lincoln-Douglas debate, or LD, was a series of 7 famous debates in 1858 between Abraham Lincoln and Senator Stephen Douglas. There were many topics that were debated, including slavery, so it was a very important issue at that time. They were running against each other just for Illinois State Senate, so it wasn't during Abraham Lincoln's presidential election or while he was president. Their debates are so famous, though, that students on today's debate teams use this structure when competing against each other. So it's something that we've seen tried and true over the past 150 years. Now, the structure itself is kind of overwhelming since we don't necessarily know all the vocabulary quite yet. But the important thing to notice is that the two debaters take turns. There's no interrupting. And for some of you, that's going to be very hard, but that is part of the debate structure. It's very fast. Each group has less than 7 minutes to talk each time. And it's a combination of delivering speeches and rebuttals to the other person's comments in order to kind of clarify your argument and to counteract theirs. So you can see that there's a first constructive, and that's 6 minutes long. And then you've got the cross-examination, that's 3 minutes. And it's the opposite side. So affirmative is like pro, and negative is like con. Okay? So you can see as we go down, it rotates back and forth for a long amount of time, short amount of time. Our structure is very similar, but we've got a couple different terms that we'll use, and it is much shorter. So our structure is the affirmative opening statement, and that's only 4 minutes. The first negative rebuttal, so pro is affirmative, negative is con. And then you will get 2 minutes for that rebuttal. Then the negative opening statement gets their turn with the same amount, 4 minutes. First affirmative rebuttal, and then affirmative closing statement. So we'll have opening statement, rebuttal, and closing statement. Okay, so those will be the structures that you will be writing within your debate team. Okay, so we are getting to part 2, terms to know. Our our vocabulary will be on a quiz next Friday. Okay, so the first terms that we're going to be looking at is opening statement and closing statement. I just mentioned them when we talked about the structure of the debate. The opening statement is a statement made by the debater for each side at the beginning, which obviously opening, beginning. Okay, it outlines the case that they intend to make. The closing statement is the summary of the case, which attempts to persuade the judge and the jury, if there is one, to favor his or her side. Now, the opening statement is a speech that you prepare and practice in advance, but the closing statement is something that you can only practice it to a point because you're going to have to respond to the arguments that the other team has made. Okay. A counter-argument is the opposite argument or viewpoint from what the speaker or writer is saying. So this is if you have one argument on your side, you're going to want to have the counter-argument ready to go to anticipate what the other team will be saying. A rebuttal is part of our structure again. It's that response that refutes an argument. It's a comeback. And refute means to prove false or incorrect. So you're just trying to prove them wrong. Remember, if I'm going too quickly through these, please just take a moment, stop the video so you can make sure you're filling in all the blanks. Okay, so we've got 4 words on this slide. Justify, acknowledge, delineate, and evaluate. Justify, which sounds like justice, means to defend, explain, or make excuses for by reasoning. So if you feel justified, you would say that I feel justified in doing this action because I have experience that tells me I am right. So that would be justified. Acknowledge is to recognize or admit, so I can acknowledge that you have a point, but that solution is still impossible. Or I can acknowledge that you're right, but I could say that I still know what is better for you. Delineate, this is part of your standards that you've been working on in reading and in language arts. It means to mark the outline of, to sketch and describe in detail. So, our example is the students tried to delineate the speaker's argument by making an outline of all the main ideas. Think you've done that before with your discussion webs, and then also with the graphic organizer. Evaluate is to examine, assess, and judge carefully. So if the judge evaluates all the evidence and then decides who's guilty, that is him examining and assessing the evidence. Okay. Claim, evidence, logic, and reasoning. Now in our media influence unit, we talked a lot about claim and support. Same thing goes here. A claim is a statement that is open to challenge and that requires support. Evidence is support. Okay, it's relevant pieces of information that support a claim. Those facts, quotations, examples, statistics, and stories. So those are not going away. Logic is a method of reasoning or thinking. Okay, I used logic to realize that if Disney is magic and magic makes wishes come true, then going to Disneyland would make my wishes come true. This is kind of like math. If you think of A equals B and B equals C, so A equals C. It's that logic kicking in. And last is reasoning, a mental activity that consists of organizing information or beliefs into a series of steps to reach conclusions. So when we try to reason with you when you don't do your homework, we may say, well, if you do your homework next time, you can get a Pride Award. Something like that. You're reasoning with someone. And that doesn't actually hold true. If you do your homework, you don't get a Pride Award. I expect you to do your homework. Okay, these three are going to be probably the most important ones to really get into your head today. The status quo is the current way of doing things. So right now at Prairie, we don't have uniforms. So that would be our status quo. Now the affirmative would be the team in favor of changing the status quo. So if we were debating school uniforms, we would say that the affirmative side is Prairie Points should be required to wear uniforms to school every day because they want to change the status quo. Now the negative is the team against changing the status quo. So they would say, I want to keep the current dress code the same. You will have teams of 6 people that will have 3 on the affirmative and 3 on the negative. So it will be important to understand which side is changing the status quo and which side is keeping it the same. Okay, because that will be part of what you're researching, obviously. Okay, relevant and irrelevant. This is when you're searching through those facts in the articles. Relevant is connected with or related to the subject that you are looking for, and irrelevant is having nothing to do with the subject. So if I'm giving a speech about Care Bears, and I'm talking all about Care Bears, and then all of a sudden I throw in something about Teenage Ninja Mutant Turtles, then that would be irrelevant. If I stick with Care Bears the entire time, that is all relevant information. These last two are ones that we need to remember as we're constructing our arguments. Causation and correlation. Causation is a cause and effect relationship in which one variable controls the changes in another variable. And correlation is just the relationship between 2 variables. The important thing to remember is that just because 2 things are related doesn't mean that one causes the other, so don't mix them up. So if we think, does smoking always cause cancer, or are the 2 things just related? Think about that. And then this next one, will French fries always make you fat, or are there other factors too? If you eat one French fry, are you going to become fat just because you ate a French fry? Probably not. There are other factors that are coming into play as well. Okay, now we are finished with the PowerPoint. If you need to go back through, that is perfectly fine. You are going to be able to study on Quizlet. You can search for my name. It's at the top of your guided orange sheet. We will again be having a quiz on this next Friday, so please be studying these as we go throughout the week.